Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and today I'm here to help you get set up for Game Week 18. Right then, so let's get stuck into it. And first and foremost, do remember to hit like and subscribe if you're new around here, just so you don't miss out on any future content. In the meantime, let's have a look at how my team did in Game Week 17. So 65 points. Not bad. I'm pretty happy. It's a nice green arrow as it stands. So I've gone up another 60-ish K in Game Week 17. The one asterisk is obviously we don't know exactly what's going on with the Luton-Bournemouth game as it stands. So depending on whether those Solanke points get locked in or not, that could be a smaller green arrow because I don't have him in my team, or a larger one if the points get wiped out altogether. So we'll just wait and see what FPL give us as an answer there in the next couple of days, hopefully. In the meantime, let's take a quick look at the team. So 3 clean sheets in my back 3, which was actually really surprising. Porro, Tsimikas and Saliba all banking clean sheets, which is a pretty rare occasion in FPL this season. So very happy with those 3. Moving into the midfield, the only real highlight was Palmer, obviously getting the goal, assist and 3 bonus. Gordon getting the assist. He was unlucky not to get a little bit more. And then up front, Ollie Watkins was one of my 2 transfers in alongside Porro. Both of them returned, so really repaid that -4 hit that I took to get rid of Haaland, to get rid of Matty Cash. So overall, very happy with the moves I made. And despite the fact that Lascelles is stuck on my bench with 6 points, I'm pretty happy with the decisions I made overall in my lineup. The one obvious omission there is the fact that Darwin is still in the team, and he was shocking in the Man United game again. So I need to probably have a think about what I'm going to do with him soon. But in the meantime, let's take a look at some of the key topics ahead of Game Week 18 to help you get set up for that deadline. So to start off with, I just wanted to give a quick update on Erling Haaland. And obviously, he has the blank in Game Week 18 anyway, so it's not a massive issue for this week. But we're all monitoring his fitness status in the Club World Cup as it stands. So just for anyone who's not already aware, he didn't play last night in the semi-final of the Club World Cup. Man City won 3-0 and progressed to the final. So we'll get another opportunity to see whether or not he makes the bench, or at least he's in training ahead of the final for the Club World Cup. Now, all of that will go down in the next few days. So we won't probably, if he doesn't play in that match at least, we won't really get much of an update on whether or not he's going to be back for Game Week 19. Although all the signs are at the moment that it's actually probably looking pretty doubtful he will be. He's obviously not training at the moment. He's not on the bench. And if we have the same news going into the Club World Cup final, he's not training, not on the bench, then it's going to be a pretty tight turnaround to get him ready for the Everton game, considering it comes just a couple of days after. Now, there is a tight turnaround all the way through to the new year now, so if he's out of the Everton game, he could easily also be out of the Sheffield United game. Although some sources within Man City are hoping that he would be fit for Game Week 19, given the news that we're getting at the moment, it's looking less and less likely. So just want to monitor. I'm still keeping the money in the bank for now to get back to him in one move without having to sell Salah, without having to sell Son in Game Week 21, because I'm still hopeful that he'll be back before then. But if we don't get any more positive news during the Club World Cup, it is starting to look less likely he'll be back for Game Week 19, and therefore maybe you can start spreading those funds around a little bit more. Okay, so let's take a look at the captaincy matrix ahead of Game Week 18. And the way I see it, there are 4 main candidates that will be the most popular ones this game week. The one that is taking a lot of the plaudits at the moment is Ollie Watkins, and you can see why. 18 goals or assists this season already. 0.62 XGI per 90, and obviously he's hit that 100 mark and has a prime fixture against Sheffield United at home. Other options do include Mo Salah. Now, Mo Salah is leading the table in terms of that XGI per 90 out of these 4 options. 0.92 is very, very strong. Also has the most points across the season so far, but obviously will have to go up against Arsenal, which is by far the most difficult fixture out of the 4 on the spreadsheet at the moment. So Arsenal, I think, would put me off going with Mo Salah this week. I think he's still going to be a decent enough differential captaincy option, but his ownership will remain around 100% EO in terms of the top ranks. I wouldn't expect him to be mass captain this week given the fixture, but you could go against the template. You could go with a differential option here, and maybe Mo Salah would be a rare differential option considering the fixture. Beyond that, you've got Heung-min Son against Everton at home. Now, again, the data's looking really good. It's ever so slightly better than Ollie Watkins in terms of that XGI per 90, and also slightly improved on the points as well. The one thing I would say about Son up against Everton is that Everton have kept 4 clean sheets on the bounce there. Underlying defensive data is looking quite strong at the moment. So I'd expect that to be a relatively large challenge for Tottenham. I don't think they'll be kept out altogether. I do expect them to score and I do expect them to win, but I don't think it's going to be a really high scoring occasion. So maybe you're looking at 1, maybe 2 returns as an absolute ceiling for Spurs assets. So I'm not as convinced, although he probably would be my second favourite captaincy option this game week. After that, there's another differential option out there in Kieran Trippier. Now, he came back from injury in the Carabao Cup last night, was at fault for the goal, the Chelsea equaliser in the 90th minute, and Luton away won't be any easy task. Luton at home have looked much better than they have done away, so they will make it difficult for Newcastle. So this would be pretty differential, but considering his ownership has dropped in the last couple of weeks due to the suspension, he could be a really interesting option if you back Newcastle to do well against Luton this game week. The XGI per 90 is obviously way lower than all of the other players here, but he's also got the benefit of potential clean sheet points. So if you back Newcastle to keep that clean sheet, then he actually might not be a bad option at all. So getting the 4 points for the clean sheet, he's always top on bonus if they do that, mainly because of the amount of chances he creates. And then if one of those chances ends up assisting someone, you're looking at a 12 to 15 pointer just off of a couple of returns. So Kieran Trippier could be a good outside shout, but overall, I think Ollie Watkins is top of this spreadsheet for me. I think he's the number 1 option, and I'm going to keep it pretty simple in my team. After that, Son would be my second favourite, followed by Salah and then Trippier as well. So do let me know in the comments below who you're thinking of captaining this game week. And as always, please let me know any questions you've got ahead of the deadline in the comments below too. So another thing I just quickly wanted to highlight ahead of game week 18 is that there are quite a few notable players just 1 game away from suspension at the moment. So if they pick up 1 more yellow card, they're going to have a 1 match ban. So it won't be an issue this game week, but ahead of game week 19, it is a really tight turnaround. So keeping an eye on a few of these players, if they're in your squad, could be really helpful, and making sure you've got an out route in case they do get suspended, or at least some bench cover so that if they've got a 1 game ban, you can just bench them for 1 game. So a few of the highlighted players I wanted to mention today. Matty Cash is still owned by around 20% of managers. He's lost his place, or seemingly lost his place most of the time for Aston Villa. So to be honest, I'd expect him to be a pretty comfortable sell after this game week anyway. A few of you out there might be holding on to him for the Sheffield United game, and that's absolutely fair enough. Hopefully he does start in that for you, but he could easily get suspended any week now. So I would say that after this game week, he's probably a pretty easy sell. Beyond that, Anderson as well is owned by a few managers, 1 game away from suspension, and Palace's fixtures aren't amazing. So I'd say that he's a pretty easy sell soon as well. Lascelles is a player in my team that not only am I worried about his starting place with Botman coming back in now as well, but he's also 1 game away from a suspension. So he's a player that I need to be looking to move away from in the next couple of game weeks. No question there. In midfield, you've got Mitoma, Sterling and Palmer. I think Palmer is probably the one that most managers are flocking to at the moment. So just one to look out for. He is 1 game away from a suspension. But I think considering how important he's been to Chelsea and the fact that Chelsea's fixtures beyond this game week are still looking really good, I'd probably just bite the bullet, take that 1 game week suspension if it comes, and hope that he survives past the barrier in a couple of game weeks' time. So the suspension sort of gets wiped out and you have to get to 10 yellow cards before getting suspended. Mitoma and Sterling are interesting options. A few people have still got them in their teams, so just want to keep an eye out there. Mitoma as well in a few game weeks' time. I think game week 21, he'll be going off to the Asia Cup, so he's probably a transfer out pretty soon as well. Outside of that, the only other player of real fantasy interest at the moment, Darwin, has now hit 4 yellow cards. So not only is he not performing in terms of the underlying attacking returns that we're all expecting from him, but also the yellow cards are really racking up as well now. So he could be suspended pretty quickly. So he's a player that I'm very keen on getting rid of soon. As I mentioned, take a look at this sheet. Screenshot it if you have to, save this video if you need to. Make sure that you've got an eye on any players that are on this sheet. If they're on 4 yellow cards and they're in your team, then just have a plan for what you're going to do with them in the next couple of game weeks should they get suspended. So goalkeepers are a bit of a hot topic at the moment, with Sanchez looking like he's out for a few weeks and Areola maybe losing his place as well. So there's a few options around that I'd like to recommend. These are probably the top 6 keepers at the moment in my mind anyway. I think there are other options. There's Vicario, but he's a little bit expensive. There's Alisson, who's always going to tick along, but again, might block a Liverpool spot for you. So I think overall, these 6 goalkeepers are probably the ones that I'd be most tempted by in the next few game weeks. So Leno first up has one of the higher XGCs per 90 at 1.87, but he's also got a very high rate of saves. So 4.29 per 90 is very good, and the next 2 fixtures are also looking pretty good as well against Burnley and Bournemouth. After that, Pickford has been very impressive, obviously kept 4 clean sheets on the bounce. The XGC per 90 at 1.32 is very, very strong, but the saves are a bit lower. The fixtures aren't looking so good. I would say 3 of the next 4 are pretty difficult fixtures to keep a clean sheet in, so maybe he's one that I'd probably put to one side for now due to that. Raya is a really interesting option. He's on the upper side of the price for these 6 keepers at 4.9, I believe now. But the XGC per 90 is by far the best at 0.69. That's very, very strong. And even though the saves aren't that high, the fixtures after this game week are looking really, really good. So West Ham, Fulham and Crystal Palace, all decent opportunities at a clean sheet there. So he could be a really good sleeper pick just to hold in your 11 for the foreseeable, and he'll just tick over with clean sheets even if the save points aren't there. After that, a few other options include Onana. Yes, the XGC is not great. Yes, Man United don't look fantastic, but he has kept quite a few clean sheets. The saves are looking good, and the fixtures aren't absolutely terrible, although I wouldn't say they're necessarily the best out of all the keepers here. Dubravka is going to be another popular option. I think personally, I'm probably going to avoid him for the time being. The game weeks are running out before we hit January. I think they might be looking at bringing in a new keeper in January, and they've only really got 2 games left before the fixtures turn, and they go up against Liverpool and Man City back to back. So if you've already got him, I think that's absolutely fine. I'd actually quite enjoy that for the next 2 game weeks. But after these 2 game weeks, I think he's probably a keeper I would avoid looking at because 1, I don't know how long he's going to keep his place for, and 2, the fixtures run out pretty quickly. After that, one differential option could be Neto. Good amount of saves. The XGC per 90 isn't absolutely horrendous. Nottingham Forest and Fulham in the next 2, but again, a bit like Dubravka, the fixtures run out, and Tottenham away, Liverpool at home after that, not ideal. So I need to make a keeper transfer this game week. So which one of these keepers is at the moment going to be my favourite transfer in this week? Well, let's find out now. So with Sanchez crocked for, it seems like a few game weeks now, annoyingly, I need to spend my game week 18 transfer probably on a keeper. I've got back up with Turner on my bench, but he performed really badly against Spurs. And with the new manager coming in, I have no idea whether he's going to continue starting for Nottingham Forest. So I think my hand is probably a little bit forced here. The keeper that I'm most tempted by at the moment is Bernd Leno at Fulham. Yes, the XGC per 90 is pretty high, but the saves are really good. And if they do keep a clean sheet, he's probably going to be the Fulham player on maximum bonus, a couple of save points, and looking at a pretty decent haul. Burnley and Bournemouth are a good starting point. After that, he goes up against his old club Arsenal, which I don't absolutely hate. although I don't expect a clean sheet from, let's be honest. After that, Chelsea as well can be a pretty difficult team to predict. So who knows what Fulham could do in a London derby there. And then after that, the fixtures do look really good all the way up to game week, I think it's 26 or 27. So Bernd Leno for Fulham is a likely transfer in this week. I think my second favourite is going to be Raya. The only thing I'm slightly concerned about with him is, yes, he's a little bit more expensive. He's also got Liverpool in game week 18, so I'd have to contest with that. And then later on down the line, it could block a third Arsenal player elsewhere where I've got good value in Gabriel potentially. I could be looking at Martin Ødegaard in the midfield or Gabriel Jesus up front. And whilst at the moment I'm not sure which of those players I'd bring in, I'm pretty convinced that in a few game weeks' time, I'm going to want to have a triple up of Arsenal outfield. So having Raya in goal could be quite nice just to tick over, but I think I'd prefer to have that third Arsenal spot in my side lined up for someone with a little bit more upside in my starting 11. So I think Leno is likely going to be my goalkeeper transfer of choice. So let's have a look at how that locks in my team ahead of game week 18. Make sure you do go and follow me over on Twitter, now known as X, at FPL Pricey for my final Game Week 18 reveal. Now, I have put the move into my team here. So Leno starting between the sticks against Burnley seems like a pretty decent fixture for him. So I am pretty convinced at the moment that that will be my transfer in, although I do always leave myself open to a change of heart. So do make sure you go and follow me over on X, where I will be posting my locked in lineup ahead of the deadline. In defence, I've got Lascelles starting away at Luton at the moment. I am a little bit nervous about whether or not he plays this match, mainly because we haven't heard whether or not Fabian Schär is going to be back in time for this fixture. Now, if he is back, I would expect it to be a combination of Botman and Schär in the back line, and Lascelles would drop out and lose his place. So that will eventually happen now that Botman is back from injury. It's just whether or not I can rely on him to start this game week or not. I think Botman probably does start. It's whether Schär is now back from injury or not. If he is, then Lascelles probably drops out, and I would have to rely on Saliba coming in away at Liverpool. The other option on my bench would be Charlie Taylor away at Fulham. I'm not sure which of those two I'd actually prefer to come off my bench, but as it stands, I'm backing Arsenal because of their great underlying data. I'd expect them to hopefully be able to keep Liverpool a little bit more quiet than the average team would. So whilst I would expect them to concede, it wouldn't be the most surprising thing in the world if they were able to keep a clean sheet. So maybe Saliba is the more logical option there. Elsewhere in defence, I've got Tsimikas at home to Arsenal and Porro at home to Everton. Not expecting too much from Tsimikas, but again, I don't think I've got better options elsewhere in my backline. So he will start this game week, and then Porro against Everton isn't bad either. Beyond that, in my midfield, the main issue that I'm looking at the moment is potentially Anthony Gordon. Now, he got flagged last night after going off with a little bit of a knock, I think on the 50th, 51st minute, just after half-time against Chelsea. He did get kicked a lot in that game, so I wouldn't be massively surprised to see him miss out in game week 18, although Eddie Howe has been playing him through thick and thin, and it does seem that if he's even half fit, Howe will play him regardless. So I'm going to stick with him. I'm going to stick with him in my starting 11 as well, and hope that he does start, because if he does, that's a good fixture against Luton. If he doesn't play though, either Saliba or then Archer coming off my bench against Aston Villa isn't ideal, but also I don't think it's worth taking a hit to correct that problem, especially when I want Gordon long term anyway. So I think I'm probably going to hold him for the time being, but if the injury comes out and it's a little bit more serious than we're maybe presuming at the moment, maybe he misses a few game weeks, then that is probably a move I will have to also make. However, for the time being, I'm hoping not to take a hit, and I'm hoping to hold him in my starting 11. As mentioned in an earlier section, Watkins as my captain is going to be probably the play for me this game week. If you've skipped ahead, make sure you go back and watch my captaincy matrix for my logic on that. Because Son and Salah are both decent enough choices. I just prefer Ollie Watkins for the reasons I stated earlier. Outside of that, there's not a lot more to talk about. Darwin maintains his place up front for me, mainly because I'm waiting to use that transfer on getting Erling Haaland back in the next couple of game weeks. I think if I wanted to be more aggressive, I'd probably look at getting rid of him and maybe buying Solanke for a 1 game week punt. But again, I don't really want to be taking a -4 this week when so many others are. I want to maybe play slightly more conservatively, and because I've got playing players on my bench, if none of them were playing, if they were all injured or maybe not even in the starting 11, then I'd be more convinced in taking that -4 and maybe seeing the upside. But if Darwin doesn't start or doesn't get minutes, then I think it's unlikely that a -4 necessarily pays off. So I think for this game week, I'm pretty locked in with this as my starting 11, but do let me know in the comments below what you think of that team, whether or not you think I'm making any mistakes there. And of course, as always, let me know in the comments below as well if you've got any of your own deadline dilemmas that I can help solve ahead of game week 18.